Wepwawet Saw family.
Hotel.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right.
All right. Yeah, just trying to get everything together for class today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know when I can ask a question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll go ahead and get the questions out now. So before we get into the subject.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first I'd like to say I'm glad you were saying you're going to do a class on the eugenics movement, because it seems like that's a topic that is like it has heavy attention on it, but it's never really being discussed as far as I know, because it has a lot of mixture, in it. Nobody's really breaking it down from how it is.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. His problem is very few of us even know exactly what it is.
Mhm.
Even
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
I want to ask a question on the black code. You already know what the black codes are, right?
The black codes.
Right. I remember somebody was talking about it, saying the black codes were actually put in place, since the 17 to 1800s, or the freedom of blacks, saying if ever a time when blacks actually rebelled up in society, they would have to put them in some type of concentration camps, or somebody actually called them FEMA camps, where they try to block them out. And if it gets too bad, they'll have to put the ones who are actually, let's say the police force or the military, and let's say they have any black soldiers or any African descent soldiers, they will have to put them in those camps too.
Mhm. Right.
Right.
Yeah, black codes would basically what the Jim Crow laws were prior to Jim Crow being called Jim Crow.
Mhm.
Because they were already in effect after the Civil War. Before they were called black codes, they were called the slave codes. Remember that, right?
No.
Yeah,
no, I
they
didn't
were
know
called
about
the slave
that.
codes. Yeah, they were called the slave codes first. Before they were called the black codes, they were called the slave codes. They were just out for slaves that were run away. Slaves that were run away, and slaves that were out that wasn't supervised. And the slaves were still property. They were still bought and sold property. So slaves that were not under any white elite slave owner supervision, they had you had the right to either apprehend or kill.
Mhm.
And that was the slave codes first. Black codes were established, if you remember, because there were a lot of free in the North. You had, well, not a lot, but you had a good amount of free states, particularly Boston, New York in particular, the main ones. And the black codes were created to basically keep us in check. As you said earlier, would keep us in check, in case, there was going to be some type of uprising. It was able to, because remember, we were still being policed, prior to any form of Jim Crow. The black codes were in place to basically police or put in control what we were going to do. The population of blacks in the United States. The black codes were very severe. It was same thing. You can go out, you saw someone, you saw a black person, because legally blacks were able to be killed by whites for anything at all. It hadn't necessarily be, a slave uprising. They can legally kill you for whatever they wanted to. They can make up a reason why they killed you. And also the black codes also were responsible for the voting polls at that time, because we began to vote a lot more. Remember, we finally got that right to vote at the end of the Civil War. And at the end of the Civil War, we finally got the right to vote, but they enacted those black codes even harder with the uprising of the Klan to stop us from getting to those polls and actually stop us completely from taking over politically, because we were raising up our own politicians. It's not the way it is now where we just vote for random individuals. It was people we were raising up. It was like, homegrown politicians that were changing things, so they had to find a way to curb that situation. But as far as the camps that were being created, I'm not too familiar with that at that particular time. They probably were, because, you know, they could do pretty much what they wanted to do to us anyway. But yeah, I can see that, but I'm not too familiar with it myself. You just hit me to something.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's that? What about the black codes? Well, I just hit you new to.
You said something about the different camps at that time in the 1800s, because the only camps I know about was the camps that were being in place later on after the Vietnam War for the King Alfred plan.
Okay. The reason why I'm saying it, because the guy who was talking, he was saying that before they were called black holes, it was called, I don't know, King Charles, it was named after some type of royalty before it became the black holes. I don't know where these a different set of rules, or are these the same rules changed up, or was that first set of rules abolished, you know, due to slavery, because you had to worry about nothing like that. Then they brought them back, or they brought them back on a different title. But he said that those laws, you know, have been around, you know, for the longest, because, you know, you had blacks up there in Europe. So I wanted to know, what were those carried down laws from Europe over here to America?
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, you still had slavery going on in Europe. You still had inhuman things going on to Africans in Europe. As I posted a couple of days on in Facebook, that, you know, we were being used as circus attractions. You know, it was, people think that American slavery and, you know, North American slavery and Brazilian slavery is bad. They were, the thing is that the Europeans were amazed at the African. They were amazed at the African and the build and the shape, male and female. And so they were using us as attractions, and not only as people in bondage to do work, but we were doing work on how should I say this? We were doing work for them to entertain them. You know, because, again, the first form of any form of entertainment is African entertainment, but it was on a negative level. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're dealing with Europeans, of course, yeah, they've been doing things to Africans, you know, that they were able to nab and capture, you know, especially the whole Sarah Bartman story. You know, that's very infamous, and a lot of African-centered people, or just Africans born in America of African descent, still don't know about the whole Sarah Bartman situation. And that's where, you know, her whole image is what they base now for the whole look of African women with the big asses and those other stuff. They get this from her.
Yeah, you're right. I actually stumbled onto that video about a couple of years ago about Sarah Barton, and what's the thing is that when she passed, she was very young. You know, she was in her 20s, and you know, and all the money that was making off of her, their thanks for her was when she died, they actually cut her up in little pieces and harvest her organs. And luckily, you know, a couple of years back, they actually fought to get her organs and her remains back, and actually do a proper burial for her. But the whole thing is that this lady here, you know, and I heard she's from a certain tribe. The reason why she had, you know, this all fatty tissues in different places. Right. Yeah. And, you know, it's just funny how they was seeing us. And like you said, these were European men. If I'm not mistaken, these were European men. Now, why her? She was in America. Then she went to Europe. Then she died. Then they did that to her.
Right. And this is her whole image and the name for her, the Hottentot woman. That was also her name that they gave
Venus,
to her.
I think so.
Yeah, Hot Venus, Hottentot woman. The word Hottentot is also found in Let's Set the Record Straight by my father, Dr.York, as well. You know, he mentions her in that book. A lot of people don't know. But yeah, we've been attractions for Europeans for years. So I clearly can get where you're coming from. And just that book, just that movie alone, just sheds some type of energy onto what they've been doing to us for years. You know, that's a tribe of women that are built like that, but they weren't being exploited. You realize that was the start of the exploitation of African women being built like that, because now they're being more exploited now on TV, music videos, as you see, by white people. You
know, right. The question is, how are they being exposed? I remember the brother Tyrese was saying a while ago they had a magazine with what's the sister Gary Sitterbaker and another white lady, and they had this white lady to them she was like good looking she had everything, and Gary Sitterbaker is kind of is an obese out of shape woman, and the thing is he was saying like what they're trying to do, they're trying to make a comparison. See, it was one thing when you had just sisters being exploited for certain things, and now it's getting to the point where they actually see that these women are actually competing with their women. Right now, I mean, it's a known fact that a black woman who takes care of herself can actually look young for a long time. So I think they're seeing that. That's why you're not seeing a lot of fit black women on screens. You do, they're all in their 40s. There's a reason for them to do it. But they're really promoting. How can I say, the obese sisters? Not saying it's wrong being big, but I think they're really trying to promote more the obese sisters, and trying to say this is how the general black woman looks today. She's big, she's obese, she's obnoxious, she's yellow. And they did a poll in some magazines saying why black women are not that good looking. And I guess they're really trying to drive that home for everybody, because we're now to the point of believing that our hair is bad. Now they're trying to say on a worldly tip that we just don't look good.
Right. Yeah, they have to create an image because they're saying now that this is the image that black men like. The really huge, very unattractive woman. The very rebellious, talk back type. And that's not the case at all, because you got to remember that type of size and that type of mentality, all that comes from working in the slave master's home, feeding his kids, and that's where that stems from. Because you had tribes of Amazonian women in Africa, but they weren't a Gabby Sidibe size. They weren't a mammy size. That's something that is irregular when it comes to African people. So I truly get that. It's a movement, because I realize African people in this country are not supposed to have any type of sexual appearance, meaning that you can be attractive, but you can't be attractive in a peaceful way and in a tasteful way. They have to make it a way where you either are either a slut, or in terms of a man, you can't. It can't. That's why if you notice when you're looking at People magazine, because People magazine, they always have that standard for the sexiest man alive. The only time I've ever seen an African male on the cover has been Denzel Washington, and that's just me. Other than that, it's been all white men.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the image of masculinity. That's the image of beauty. They have to promote that as far as a male or handsomeness in this country. But whenever you deal with a white woman, they always make sure they push certain women like Sandra Bullock, the Michelle Pfeiffers, the Kim Basinger. They've been doing this since the 70s, 80s, and 90s and so on to now. But when it came down to African women seen in the media, the first image you're going to get is Love and Hip Hop and the Basketball Wives.
Right.
So that's, of course, that's a concentrated effort automatically.
Right, and I think shows like that is really actually making us look bad on many different levels. Not only that they're showing it on TV, but I really find it really mind-boggling that people are having discussions about love and hip hop, but not they're having discussions about cases like, first off, Trayvon Martin.
Mm-hmm.
How the community's doing. Everybody's really talking about what's going on with this girl right here. I'm like, these people right here are doing this on purpose. I mean, you got millions of dollars and you're acting crazy on TV like you don't have it, and people are literally following it. And I always tell them, I say, these people don't really care about you. The only thing they care about is you watching the show. That's it.
Right.
Love and hip hop, love and basketball, whatever shows they ever come out with, they're not aimed at helping the black community at all.
Right. You know, it's not. Yeah, because all it is a form to objectify first off, and secondly to give an image that, number one, black male and female relationships don't work. You know, either the man is always cheating or the woman is always in his face. That is being pushed hard in these shows because none of them have stable relationships at all. None of them have stable relationships at all. You can't name not one in neither one of those shows if you watch it, because the first people that are being influenced by this are our kids. Our kids see this first because nothing else that they watch on TV. They don't watch any education. They don't watch the BBC. They don't watch TLC. They don't watch none of those channels, the History Channel, none of these things. The first thing they watch is ratchetness. They're being pointed to ratchetness. And so that's an impression being put upon our people. That's why they have to keep, you know, it's like these kids, it's like the shows are having babies, because now you got different shows having branch offs of these shows. You know, the hip hop wives and basketball wives are having, you know, splinter groups as splinter shows from these shows. They can't stop. They got to keep making these type of shows.
Right, just like Flavor Flav. I remember when he came out and he started, you know, cooning. Everybody loved his show. They gave him a second season. Then when he stopped, they gave Nuwaupu a show. Then when Nuwaupu was saying stop, they gave the guys a show. And I'm thinking that, you know, all this is branched off from there. It's really crazy. It's like that they just came up with another way of keeping the ignorance, you know, there. But, you know, but like a movie like, let's say, other documentaries like, let's say, Hidden Colors, you know, which was number one on Amazon, you don't hear it on television. You don't hear it in the media. And this was actually number one on Amazon. They normally would show that somewhere down the road. But you know, it just goes to show you that they're literally keeping a movie like that on the hush. Don't matter how much knowledge is in it. If it shows any type of black pride, it's bad.
Right. 500 years later, as well as something I recommend to a lot of people, that we were not going to watch that. We refuse to watch that. You know, and the thing is, it's not so much, it's not a conscious decision, it's a subconscious decision. You subconsciously don't want to see yourself as being progressive. You are so used to seeing yourself, because it's a trained, it's like we're trained like cattle, like dogs. So we're trained to see something a certain way. You know, because everything that you see on TV is supposed to invoke a certain amount of response from you. Anytime you see something, well, even if from TV to movies to a book to a magazine, these are all doses to feed that subconscious part of you to further invoke the spell of who you are. You know, because the spell is not just about being a Christian, Muslim, Jew. The spell is about how you react to things, how you see yourself. And it's not only about what they show on TV to affect whites and affect other races who see us all across the world. The main focus is to get us to continue to see ourselves as being racially inferior and seeing whites as racially superior.
All right.
They got to continue that. It's not going to stop, you know, because the system is falling. So the one thing they have left is the media. The one medium that they have left is the media to continue to keep showing us in a negative light. They can't show us. I mean, do we really expect them to show us in a positive light ever?
You know, it's been over 50, you know, years, decades since, you know, the media first came out hard and strong, and they have never, you know, done that. I recently seen on Facebook that somebody said the media covers everything, but there's a group of young black men who all in their class graduated, all with high honors. You know, we're never going to see that. And another thing, me and my sister was getting a debate about this. You remember Oprah had the all-girls school in Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everybody was on, you know, it was Oprah's money, you know, and all that. And I said, you know, I'm not fussing about, you know, it's her money. She could do what she wants to. I still have an opinion about it and was saying about it. My thing was this, is that I was talking to her, I was letting her know, like, you know, if I would have done it, I would have had all boys and girls school. Either it was together or separated, but it would have been something else. And she was saying, well, hey, you know, most of the boys, have already had education. They've been mistreating the women, so it's about time to get back to the women. I said, it's true. I think we need to uplift our sisters, but the problem is that if we, and I know we're doing it here in America, a lot of women are now raising their sons to be inferior and teaching their daughters to actually be, superior to men, not to raise them, but just as in a way like you're better than any black boy out there. Like I was watching this movie with Samuel Jackson called See No Evil. There's a scene up in there where the white lady actually went off on a black sister, but when she went off, she covered the young boy's eyes. She asked, "Why did she do that?" She said, "So I can show my daughter how to talk to people, and so my son, can learn how to respect the lady," which I kind of get what she was saying. But I'm seeing nowadays, you got women who are really resenting their sons and putting their daughters on a pedestal.
Right.
And this is what I'm thinking is causing the feminine energy, at least one way of feminine energy, because you're seeing these guys here who mistreating women. I'm like, they're not being brought up to respect women because the woman who's raising them is not respecting them, not respecting herself.
Right. Yeah, it's a cycle. It's like a chain. If one doesn't respect the other, if the woman doesn't respect the male that was responsible or partially responsible for bringing a child in, then she's not going to have she's not going to have a lot of respect for the male she's bringing up anyway. That's going to carry over to his self-esteem. If the male is not around, because most males who don't have a man around usually are brought up a certain type of way, meaning that they're raised to have very feminine qualities, they have low self-esteem, because there's no man giving them that strong masculine principle inside of them. It's not being pushed. That's why men are needed. It sounds nice to say, well, I can be both to you when a woman says that, but it's not being 100% effective in raising male children as well as female children. But the emphasis is on the males. That's why we're having a lot of feminine qualities in a lot of men now. You're seeing a lot of emotional problems, a lot of men growing up to be very emotional. You have a lot of men now being very needy and need for attachment. These are all feminine qualities, and so it's an imbalancement into man. And so when you're having a problem like this and no one's addressing it, then it's going to become a detriment, because a lot of these men are no longer going to see themselves in their natural quality. So they're not going to carry on their natural innate genetic code quality. They're going to carry on something that is an unnatural state. Because because partially you're handicapping this child. When you're not raising this male child properly, you're handicapping the child. I don't care what you say. A male needs to have a man around, some form of father figure. They need fathers regardless. But if there's no father figure around, that man is not gonna carry on leadership qualities, and he's gonna be very feminine and have a lot of following traits as well. And that's a reality. We would like to be mad about it. We would like to act like this isn't real, but this is a true situation. And you have to be able to be very observative of our men now and what we put inside of them, our young men, excuse me. But yeah, let me go ahead and start class now, man, because we gotta get to the subject.
Okay.
Gotta get to the subject.
I'm glad you answered my question.
Gotta get to the subject now, though. No
right.
problem.
Hey, one last question. How you mute this line again?
How do I mute it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't get on that, but let me see. I'm not sure how to just straight up mute it. But you just press mute. Just mute yourself.
Okay.
All right. The definition of eugenics: the science of improving a human population by controlled breeding to increase the occurrence of desirable heritable characteristics. Actually, eugenics was considered a method of preserving and improving the dominant groups in the population. What they were trying to do was they were trying to preserve the Caucasian race or the beast at a specific amount of time, because their genetics was starting to regress or was starting to die out. And so the one thing that they needed to do was exterminate a certain group of people, the undesirables. Okay, and at that time, the undesirables and the poor the sick at that time were the Negroes or the Africans in this country, or the blacks. And eugenics was started in America, in California, by Sir Francis Galton in 1883 in reality. And it was funded by different groups, but main groups, also the main person was J.H. Kellogg. And some of these groups were known as the Race Betterment Foundation in Battle Creek. You also have the Carnegie Institute, and also known as the Rockefeller Institute. But J.H. Kellogg began, also known, the Kellogg Company from, Frosted Flakes, that stuff special K. Anyway, the Rockefeller family, known as the Rockefeller Foundation, but J.H. Kellogg began funding it back in 1906. Okay. Biologist Charles B. Davenport founded the Eugenics Record Office in 1911. Later became Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Also, if you go further down, you have a woman named Margaret Sanger, and she started she funded eugenics movement as well. She's a known feminist, and she was the main one that started this whole Planned Parenthood situation. The Planned Parenthood you see now, the main focus of Planned Parenthood initially was for racial extermination, meaning eugenics. Okay? They created this whole foundation, this whole Planned Parenthood Foundation. See, people are under the misconception that Planned Parenthood was just to give women a choice of whether to have a child or not. It was a free choice, women's rights, everything. No, she was funding the eugenics movement in the beginning, and later on. But when she started the Planned Parenthood Foundation, this was created in order to exterminate black women specifically, okay? Because most of the black women at that time, in the 1930s and 40s, a lot of black women in certain parts of the United States were on welfare. And one of the main requirements of welfare at that time, and we're going to fast forward even further in the 1970s, but this is during the 1945, mid-1940s, their main requirement was if you want these certain funds, you're going to have to allow us to sterilize you, okay? And it was mainly the poor. We had different blacks all around the United States that were, well off and had their own businesses, but they generally specified African Americans that they were able to have easy access to, okay? And I'm going to fast forward to the 1970s. It was also founded that several physicians were performing coerced sterilizations on specific ethnic groups of society, mainly African American women. All were abuses of poor, non-white, or mentally retarded women, while no abuses against white or middle-class women were recorded. In 1972, the United States Senate Committee testimony brought to light that at least 2,000 involuntary sterilizations had been performed on poor black women without their consent or knowledge. An investigation revealed that surgeries were all performed in the South and were all performed on black welfare mothers with multiple children. Testimony revealed that these women were threatened with an end to their welfare benefits until they consented to sterilization. Because the funds were used to carry out the surgeries came from the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity, the sterilization abuse raised older suspicions, especially amongst the black community. As federal programs were underwriting eugenics programs who wanted to impose their views about population quality on minorities and poor women. What a lot of people don't know is that eugenics was still going on in the United States in the 1980s. Okay, they were still sterilizing black women, and they're still sterilizing black women to this day in prisons. Okay, a lot of people don't know that eugenics in North Carolina was one of the main spearheads of eugenics. I'm going to go on to, this was in the 1940s. Matter of fact, I'm going to go to 1907. Indiana became the first state, a lot of people don't know this, Indiana became the first state to pass eugenics law in 1907. And in this landmark case, which is called Buck versus Bell, this was the spearhead for the eugenics program in the United States. The state of Virginia was able to legally sterilize teenager Carrie Buck, who was sent to the Virginia State Colony for epileptic and feeble-minded because her foster parents deemed her a moral delinquent. 33 states operated sterilization programs. This was for the women who were. This was fit for the women who were unfit to procreate and the mentally ill. Not only for them, but also alcoholics, people with epilepsy, people who were blind or deaf or had disabilities, people on welfare, women who were deemed promiscuous, criminals, people labeled feeble-minded, children who were victims of rape. Also, as I go back into the 1940s, got to go a little further. African-American women would go to the hospitals to give birth in North Carolina and would be sterilized after being told they needed appendixes to be taken out. Okay, they've been doing this to our people for years. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know that the intelligence quotient tests or the IQ tests that were created by Edward Binet was one of the main weapons they used in order to justify racial control. And they used this same thing that was created in Nazi Germany during the Nazi Germany camp. Even though it was rejected, they decided to take that actual document and justify what they were doing to black people. That's why if you notice at a certain point, they began using the IQ test in schools in the United States. You might talk to different whites that are being born today saying, well, they don't use that IQ test that they used back in the day. No, they're lying to you. They're still using that same type of test to justify what they were doing then to what they're doing now, because what they were doing, because you have to remember the IQ test actually has a connection to what we know now as phrenology. Phrenology, the study of the size of the head, different parts of the skull, and different parts of the brain that is related to different actions and different thoughts. And in that study, phrenology also was used as a weapon in racial control in eugenics, because part of that, which was started by a man named Johann Blumenbach, in that study, he was giving different races and different sub-races, and his main race, of course, was the white race, and part of the doctrine was, the African was mentally inferior to the white race, and then you have the Asian race who was also mentally inferior, but he also said that the Negro, the African race, can aspire to be like the white race. See, this was a doctrine that was created back in the 1700s that they began to use, or the white elites began to carry out this same doctrine and began to look at us as racially inferior in the United States. So they looked at the different property that they began to get, known as the slaves, known as the Africans, that they began to get as just racially inferior, meaning they were justifying what they were doing because in their mind we were expendable anyway because we're inferior to them. That's something that a lot of us don't know as well. And I'm going to go back to the Rockefellers. Laura Spelman Rockefeller also, because the family was investing into eugenics movement, she started Spelman College, a name Laura Spelman Rockefeller. And so whoever went to Spelman, that's your business. If that's what you chose to do, that's what you chose to do. Not telling you not to go to Spelman, but just realize the person that started Spelman, or it was named after her, was also one of the main people who had a foundation, not just gave money to the eugenics movement, but had a foundation to fund eugenics. Okay? This is something that to this day, as I said earlier, a lot of African people in America, all over the world, have no idea what eugenics is. So when sisters who are on welfare or sisters who may be sexually active may become pregnant and decide to get an abortion, just realize where you're going. Just realize what that facility that you're going into was used on your ancestors and will now be used on you in order to exterminate that womb that you supposedly hold so sacred. Okay? This information needs to be known to our people, that these people are trying to exterminate. This is part of genocide. This is part of racial control. They have to get rid of the undesirables. And they desire your genes, but they are undesired of your company. Again, they desire your genes. They love your genes because they realize they are racially inferior to you by genetics. But they undesire your company in their country. That's the divine reality. And so with eugenics, they needed some way, of course, because if you get rid of the ability to procreate, you get rid of the whole population. That's one of the main ways that eugenics, one of the main ways they've been able to keep the population at 12%, somewhere in the varying rate between 12 and 13%. Think about that. Since 1790, that they've been able to keep our population in the United States at between 12 and 13%. If Africans in this country are constantly giving birth, how are we able to be staying at 12 or 13% in this country? That's a question that we refuse to go into and answer or try to do our research about, that these people don't want us here anymore. Okay, we use you for your genes. Now get the hell on. And now, okay, well, I tell you what, to go even further, do realize that they're putting things in our food, especially the fluoride with the toothpaste that you're using. Most of the fluoride. Think about it. Why is most of the toothpaste that we use contain fluoride? Why is it that the tap water contains fluoride? Why is it that most of the foods contain genetic hormones that is killing our people? This is part of mass genocide. But one of the main forms of genocide that we still don't know about was the eugenics program. You know, all of these different people, all these different organizations that I named that funded this because they saw it as a hindrance to humanity in the United States. This is our problem because we are very misinformed on what's going on around us. As long as we're misinformed on what's going on around us, we will be socially ignorant. And we cannot afford to be socially ignorant in 2013. If you have no idea what eugenics is, then this is what you need to listen to right now. You can get your information, do your own research on all the information I just gave you, and realize this is what needs to be known to you and your family. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead, brother.
First of all, Wepwawet Ali.
Wepwawet, brother.
This is Gerber Tutor.
All right.
My question is going to lead into in what way does this play in with the prisons?
Okay. You do realize that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I know right now it's like prisons are being built everywhere, and I'm in North Carolina. I mean, I'm saying daily brothers are getting locked up on a regular.
Exactly.
So how does prison play any role in that?
Mm-hmm. That was your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was making sure that was all you got. But
yeah. I just want to know, because being that they're doing this to our women,
yeah,
and at the same time they're building new prison to lock us up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to realize the first thing you got to realize that we have to realize as a people is that prison is a business. Prisons is big. The biggest business in the United States is the mass incarcerations of African people. And to enslave us, because that's as the sister Michelle Alexander so eloquently wrote in the new Jim Crow, that's the new form of slavery. Because you got to realize, even if you're not in the correctional facility, once you are on probation or once you are on parole, you're still under correctional control, so they can still control your movements. They can control your ability to get a job, to get an apartment, to get anything. You know, they can. The thing is, it's about control. It's about racial control. Eugenics, but mainly was for women for racial control. You know, so we cannot. So she can no longer have the ability to be fertile. When you're dealing with us, you gotta realize they make sure that every black man sees themselves behind bars before they die, so that they can control what we do. They're putting, as you said, all over the world, all over the country, they're putting our men in these prison systems daily, like wholesale. They're throwing us in there wholesale. And that's it. You got to realize the war on drugs, a lot of people don't know the war on drugs was actually started by Nixon. It actually went by Nixon because it was a quote that his chief of staff, H.R. Holderman, said, we have to make sure that the people realize or the people see that the main problem is the blacks. And we have to make sure that they see it that way without appearing to show them that, you know, so to speak. And that is a problem that a lot of us don't see is the mass incarceration rates and the war on drugs that realized that there was no drug problem during that time period. I'm going back to this because I have to show not only yourself but to other people that this is just a plan to throw us in jail. This is a plan to throw us wholesale in these prisons, man. And that's why you're seeing less and less of us since the crack era, since the 1980s, since Reagan pushed the war on drugs. Because he used military aid to push the war on drugs on our people. A lot of people don't know that. This was back since 1984, 1985. Fast forward, jump even further now and go into not even into Bush's war on drugs, but going into Clinton's war on drugs. Because blacks like to always go behind Bill Clinton like he's, you know, he was the good white president, he was the black president, all of the crap. But do realize he pushed even harder than any other president when he was running for president of the United States, when he was just Governor Clinton in Arkansas, that he wanted to show that he was the conservative Democrat by putting more Africans in prisons. He pushed the war on drugs further than any other president. The matter of fact, if you push even further into Obama had a separate law that pushed up mandatory sentences when he was a senator. A lot of people don't know that either. This was back in 2006, 2007. Okay? And again, brother, you are so right. You gotta realize the war against African people, melanated people, the main thing is to take the masculine principle off the streets. You know, so we're no longer occupying our homes and being men and being leaders. We're in prison systems now becoming slaves, because now you have brothers that are going to jail for 10, 15 years for small minor offenses. You know, and once they get out, they come out to not being able to get a job, not being able to feed their families, not being able to provide for themselves or their families. So yes, this is the war on both sides, because you got to realize the sterilization hasn't stopped. Eugenics has not stopped. It just calmed it down a bit. It just sophisticated into Planned Parenthood and wanting to give people free choice and pro-choice crap, whereas that's the feminine energy. And going into the masculine energy, I'm glad you pointed out that we're dealing with mass incarceration rates. That's why you have a problem, and I'm in Houston, and you're in North Carolina.
in Houston realized that the population is you got 10 to 1. It's like 10 women to 1 man. That sounds pretty good, but at the same time, you have in Houston, you have mass incarcerations going on. You have brothers going to CDC every day in large wholesale amounts for minor offenses. Sometimes that's one of the problems that we're also facing. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question. If I did, let me know.
Yeah, no, that you did.
Okay.
I had a question. I was saying Wepwawet.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now I was saying just like the brother was talking about. He was saying now on the other side of the eugenics movement, they're planning on putting the brothers locked up and they've been doing that for years. Now, but like you're saying, they have calmed down with it. What time are they actually going to try to kick it in full gear? Now, you already said
calm down with what?
No. You said they kind of they kind of went put eugenics. They didn't really, like you just said they kind of calmed down with it or kind of put it on the low that it was done. But what time is really just going to kick in a high gear? Like one time it's going to go crazy with it. Like they just they're going to make it media wise. Like hey, you black people been messing up for years. We're going to have to make a law to sterilize you guys.
The whole law is in white supremacy system is to be as covert as possible.
Okay.
They're not gonna. It's like you said. It's like saying that, we're actually throwing these people in jail because they're black. They're not gonna come out and say that. That would blunt everything. You can't admit to the system. You can't admit to the racist system. If you admit to the racist system falls. You're saying there's a problem. So no, they're not gonna ever. You're never gonna know what they're going in high gear. Mass genocide has been going on for years, so it's in high gear now. There's no, that you can't put it in first gear if first gear is already started.
Okay, and my next question is this. Okay, now you were saying down here in Houston, that it's like one male to 10 women, and how. I'll say, is the black race, because it's just moving on decline, or we still spiking? Because, we still got sisters who are having, like, 10, 12 babies and all that stuff right there, I'm saying, is it really on decline as much as for numbers?
No, it's being controlled. It's being controlled, and it's becoming also the brink of decline, because if we got to realize melanin allows you to populate at a higher rate. Because we are of course, when we produce melanin, semen in our, in our genes, in our blood, in our semen, it produces melanin. And in that, it gives you the ability to procreate a lot faster. The problem is, with all these different things going on, they're able to keep the population at a certain rate. All over across the United States. That's one of the main reasons why, or the reason why, they do the check, what we now know as the, I can't remember the name of it, but the census. The census came to me, and the census is the main way that they are able to remember, because the census was started back during Jim Crow era. That was needed because they were trying to see exactly, are they accomplishing their birth rate stance? Are they able to keep us at 12 and 13%? So when they consistently are doing these, we got to make sure you're doing the, you're registered to vote. Did you take your census? Did they come by? Did they take the census in your place? Because they're able to, with that census, to see, are they still at 12 and 13%? So yeah, through mass genocide, they're able to keep us at a certain rate, but we are also at a decline because of these two factors.
Yeah.
And because we're at the fourth generation now, I got to add this before I go on. Because of being at the fourth generation, it is a must need that melanated people of African descent procreate even more together, male and female. And if we don't do that,
we will for sure be on the brink of a drastic problem within our race. That is our problem, because we're popping up with a lot of problems. We're popping up with a lot of cancers and a lot of DNA deficiencies because of the mixing. And the problem is, the more times an African woman or an African male mixes in with a white woman or a white male or someone of another race, that's another point of a African person not being born in this country. You're not procreating. You're mixing in melanin with something who is deficient, with a beast or a mutant who is deficient. So you can't be deficient and you can't really procreate when you're consistently going in with another race.
Mm.
And you gotta realize they push that in the media.
Yeah, I actually see that a lot. But certain people been posting like on Facebook, like let's say a TV show like Scandalous. You got Kerry Washington, who I think I don't watch the show that much. I guess she's supposed to have the affair with the president, and you already know how they put her down. So it's like it's promoting interracial dating, and it seems like they're really promoting interracial dating among black women more than black men. Because I remember at one point in time it was like based much black men are running to get white women. Anyone was saying, but I guess since sisters made a lot of hoopla and noise about it, it seemed like they decided to go do that with them. Like, hey, instead of going out with the black man, why don't you guys go out with the white man or the Asian man or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. I was saying. My next question was this: is eugenics movement only aimed at blacks? It's not aimed at Hispanics, Asians. Because Asians, so far worldly has like everybody beat on population.
Of course.
And I know it may be weird, as they do it to Asians who just come into the country, because when they come here, they come with clans. But it seems like I thought the eugenics movement was going to at least mess with other races besides blacks. I heard it was messing with a few whites as well.
Yeah, they were caught up in it. Different criminals and different kids born of retardation, because the retardation effect really wasn't taken into effect in the African race in the 1930s, early 1900s and 30s and 40s during that time. So they were trying to find a way. Remember, the whole purpose of eugenics was to curve a certain race and try to biologically create a super race, within the white race. So they had to get rid of the undesirables, the retarded, the slow, the ones with the diseases, the ones with the Down syndrome, with the disabilities, and a lot of those were whites. Whites were caught up in this as well, but over the years, the main focus became curved at African women. And so now it's still all about African women. When you're dealing with Asians, if Asians were any focus at all, they wouldn't be getting any type of capital when they come over to this country. Because blacks still don't ask themselves, why is it that, Asians come to this country and they get capital? They get some type of money to build up Chinese restaurants, and every time you turn around and go to a major city, you have a Chinatown. You don't have an African town or a Zimbabwe town or Ethiopian town or a Kenyan town or Nigerian town. You have a Chinatown, because the United States funds these Asians when they get here. So no, it's not going to be aimed at Asian women. It's going to stay at African women, because they have to get rid of, again, the undesirables. The undesirables are the African people in this country.
I was saying another thing too. About the whole plan of Marcus Garvey, right? Garvey was trying to do the Pan-African thing, trying to get black. He was talking about it, trying to send blacks back to Africa. Yep. Now, my question is this: if that was the whole case, because a lot of white people was funding him for it. If they didn't want us here in this country, why didn't they just put us all on the boat and send us all back? If that was the problem, and if they wanted to do let's say they sick experiments, they could keep a few here and do what they need to do. Like, why would you keep a whole group of blacks here for that purpose?
They didn't keep us here. You gotta realize one of the main focuses of Lincoln he brought a proposition to the Senate at a certain time during his presidency that, well, maybe why don't we just get rid of the Africans? Why don't we put them on a boat and just get rid of them? And it wasn't a thought process of Pan-Africanism or dual citizenship, as I said before. It was about getting rid of us and throwing us back there. Just get rid of us, and that was it. It was too much of us at that time, and they decided to throw that out. They decided to throw that notion out and just say, okay, let's just get rid of them. Religion is not working as good, even though it is working. We are controlling their minds. We are dumbing them down and making them feeble-minded in a lot of areas. Not all, but a lot of them. But let's just go ahead and exterminate them. Let's put the whole focus on them. But no, that was one of the main focuses were to do that. They just didn't carry it out. It was something they just didn't do. One more question before I go.
Well, okay. What is this last question for me? So since we all know about eugenics and what the history and what it's aimed to do, how can we actually, stop it or slow it down? What's the solution for us in this eugenics movement for us and our people?
For the protection of our women is almost a deprogramming and reprogramming.
Okay.
We have to get them to first off, half the battle is to get with someone who is of an African thought pattern to not want to have to get an abortion. First level, and just accept that we have a war going on against melanated people. Mm-hmm. That's the second step, and realizing that within that war, there's different ways of genocide. We have to inform our people on what's going on within information. This information is needed to be known to our women first. Just give them the history of what eugenics is. And you have to play this to them. Just give them the history of what eugenics is and where it starts from, and realize that abortion is not a good way to go. Not a good way to go. And I'm saying very lightly, abortion was meant to exterminate you. It was not meant to help you, because after you kill that child, realize that something in there is also killing your ability to be fertile after that. So it's all about studying. We have to study. And the next level is to push upon our women. This is dire need, that we do not need to go to their facilities for aid anymore. And stop going. This is the first thing we need to do is stop going to their facilities. Not just for that, also to the vaccination problem. Stop being vaccinated by their doctors. Stop depending upon the same human beast that enslaved us and put us in bondage to free us, which is an insane thought pattern to have. You can't be God when you're consistently depending upon the beast to help you. Okay?
Yeah, I'm still very, very shocked, though. I mean, I don't see a lot of black women just getting abortions like that. I mean, from where I'm staying there, that they just not naturally having them. It's been talked about, but I just don't hear it like that, unless it's on a major scale, but it's on the low.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going on. Abortions are still going on. You still go to Planned Parenthood, you still see black women there. It may not be at a large number, but they're still going. So it still needs to be known.
That's what Planned Parenthood is all about, just women going up there talking about getting abortions?
Yes, when you say Planned Parenthood, think Margaret Sanger, a funder of the eugenics movement. She was sterilizing black women. Okay. Any more questions from anybody else before I head out?
I got one more.
All right, go ahead, bro.
I'm wondering, how does it play in with them dealing with the stem cells?
Say it again.
Like with them, how does that play in with stem cells?
As far as stem cell research?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because remember stem cell research.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you were saying about stem cell research. Would you finish with your question?
Yeah, because I was saying I know like they use the fetuses and research for stem cells. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Mhm.
So I'm
yeah,
saying
because.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, you use it. Well, the whole basis of stem cell research is very parallel to what eugenics is about. Is to get to the point where you can perfect deficiencies. When you deal with stem cell research, is to get to the point within the cell to perfect deficiencies such as diseases, such as cancers and like, and they use the fetus to do this. You know, it's experimentations within the United States has often led to exterminations of African people. They've been experimenting on African people, on African women for years. You know, people. Period. When you deal with the Tuskegee experiment on black soldiers, you know, not even a separate subject. That's part of the subject. You know, and even before I go, you gotta realize eugenics was going on in Cuba as well. Do your research on that too. It wasn't just a United States thing. It's also in Cuba.
Okay.
Mhm. You know, because they were trying to curb the divorce rate, and so what they were trying to do was they were trying to perfect the mentalities of the people that were there. You know, because they were doing studies on the women, saying they were having undesirable sex. So they're having undesirable sex. And to them was the cause of divorces. So they began to experiment in Cuba on the people there as well to try to perfect situations.
Were they actually doing experiments in Africa?
Yeah, of course. They've been doing experiments in Africa for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for years. Since colonialism.
Yeah.
That's been going on since the 1600s. Experiments in Africa has been going on. They've been experimenting on Africans dealing with different viruses as well as the AIDS virus for years. You know.
Yeah.
But no, yes. When you think of stem cell research, they always flash it every now and then. But no, that was the main way that they're trying to perfect. The whole point of it is to perfect themselves, because they realize that they are genetically deficient, and because of being genetically deficient, they have to find a way to perfect who they are. Because each time they're being born, so just think about it like this, as I always tell people: how is it that if we're all supposed to be the same, if we're all genetically the same, if according to you, God created us to be genetically the same, why is it that if an African male and a white woman was to have a child, you still come out to be an African child? It may be, according to you, mixed, but he'll be an African child, okay? Why is it that if I take a white woman and a white male and they have a child, it's white? Shouldn't they be able to come out with an African child as well, or a mixed child? No, because the result of deficiency is even worse deficiency.
Well, what about I was saying, a white woman and an Asian male have a child? Would he
still be somewhat mixed, because the dominant gene would be the Asian. You know, if you mix a dominant with something from a dominant with a regressive, the dominant is going to somewhat take over. You're going to have some form of a regression within it, but the dominant will somewhat take over. But two regressive genes is going to cancel it out, and the result will be another beast child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, beast child. Okay, but I just want to say Tawat to everybody who came on the class, and I'll be ending it for now. And okay, Wadu and Hatuk Washu.
Okay, Wadu.